we hold BNC license, and at the same time, they're trying to cite its storage as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Salzman. I'm the vice chair of the commission, and I'm calling our meeting to order. I have 10 a.m. We are physically present at the TCEQ offices, and thank you to TCEQ for hosting us in Austin, Texas. And with that, now that we've officially started the meeting, I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. As a reminder to everyone, all the commissioners, when you speak today, make sure that you're.
Anybody hear that? We need.
Sorry, is that better?
Like, no, it's just not very loud on my end. As maybe my computer, Brandon, for everybody to hear you in the room.
They got a 15-year-old in the room we can borrow a speaker from.
Is this better?
We're trying to make it where everybody can hear you, Brandon. It's just the audio for the room is coming through my computer, and it's just not very loud.
There we go.
Brandon, you want to talk and see if we can hear you better?
How's this? Is that any better?
Yeah. Keep talking.
Go ahead again.
Test.
Is that better for everybody?
He's turning the volume up now.
We'll crank it up as high as we can get it.
Okay, I'll try to speak loudly too. I was going to say, just as a reminder to all the commissioners, please make sure your camera stays on, and when you're ready to speak, please say your name first, just for purposes of identification and to make sure that we have the recording the way we want it. Obviously, we have a quorum based on everybody's bright, shining faces that I see. Thank you, Commissioner Mundy and Vice Chairman Salzman, for physically being there. And I am quickly perusing, obviously I can't see who's in the audience there, but I'm quickly perusing our attendees. We appreciate Diane Fulmer, our accountant, joining us. We appreciate all the rest of you coming. I'm sure we have some attendees from the TCEQ there today. We appreciate them allowing us to use their space. It's my understanding that we will not be able to go back to the Capitol until after the session. So we will talk about that later when we get to our future meetings that may have some issues. I see several of you from other compacts. We appreciate your attendance. And with that, I will ask, have I missed anyone who is an elected official or a member of the press today?
There are no elected officials in the room today, Brandon.
Okay.
Chairman, if you want, I'll give you an accounting of who's in the room just so you know.
Okay.
Ms. Forbes is here from TCEQ. Former Representative Burnham is here. Dan Schrum, your favorite person, is here as well. Karen Haddon is here. Chance Gooden is here with TCEQ as well. Dick Adams, Brian Christian, and Eddie Selig. Those are the ones present in the room with us.
Thank you very much. Obviously, they didn't get the memo about excluding Schrum, but I guess we'll let him stay since he traveled all this way. With that, we can move on to the public comment. Again, just as a matter of housekeeping, for those of you online, if you will use the raise your hand function, which is here at the bottom of your Zoom screen, we will try to recognize you. Otherwise, if anyone in the physical location would like to speak, please come forward and state your name and who you represent.
I think Mr. Burnham would like to speak. We're going to need to turn on the mic for you.
So turn your mic off.
Yep.
Way to go, Dean.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Lon Burnham. I represent a number of environmental organizations, including Citizens for Utility Regulation and Tarrant County Tarrant Coalition for Environmental Awareness. And I mainly just want to thank staff today because of their due diligence and work in looking at the records that have been falsely reported. And of course, that leads us to the rhetorical question, if one company has done this on a repetitive basis, how many other companies have done a similar act? And what can we do to make sure that WCS and TCEQ are doing a better and more stringent job at enforcing and regulating the reporting? Falsification of documents and reporting is what leads to accidents of a serious nature, like the railroad incident in Ohio. So first of all, thank you to your staff. Thank you for the work that they've done, but there's more to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Burnham. Any other public comment? I don't see any hands raised, but I always
I gotta unmute
want to
you.
be. I see Isabel Gossley. I think, Stephen, are you controlling?
Yes, I had to mute you so we could unmute the other computer. So you're back on. We can hear you again, Chairman.
I see that Susie Bell Gossley has raised her hand electronically. So, Stephen, I think you control that. So if you would pull her into the meeting.
Mr. Gossley, you can speak now.
She's on mute.
You're muted though.
Bad, and I'm not sure whether it's vibrating and wobbly. I don't know whether it's my computer or if all of the attendees
We can hear you now.
have that problem. Thank you.
We can hear you now, Ms. Gossley. You can speak whenever everyone can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was speaking then. Good morning to everyone. It's nice to see you all. And I am calling because the sound is very wobbly and inconsistent. And I don't know if all of the attendees get the same thing I do or whether it's just my computer, because I can work on it on this end. Thank you.
We'll work on that. It might be on your end, but we'll try and improve it as best we can here.
Thank you.
I hear it too. It just breaks up every once in a while and sounds digitized. And so I don't know if it's a connectivity issue or not. But if it gets bad, please, anyone online who feels like they can't hear, please raise your hand and we will try to stop and address it before we go on. Any other public comment at the physical location? And I see no other hands raised on the Zoom. So I think with that, we can move on. The fifth item on our agenda is a consideration of an amendment from the Tennessee Valley Authority, and I will turn it over to the Vice Chairman to handle this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The technical committee has received and reviewed an amendment request from Tennessee Valley Authority. In this case, TVA has requested the addition of heat exchanger to their waste description. This was requested as a result of a replacement project that they added to the upcoming outage. Their amendment request requested no other changes, so no change to volume, no change to Curies, where it's coming from, or anything else. I would note that the additional item to the waste description was approved by TCEQ via letter correspondence dated January 12, 2023. The technical committee recommends approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the technical committee on the proposed amendment of Tennessee Valley Authority? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
So I think Commissioner Sadek had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're muted, Commissioner Sadek.
I'm sorry, Dick.
I don't. Why wouldn't this change the estimated curies or volume?
I can't answer that question, Dick, other than I can make a guess, which is perhaps they are going to send this item in lieu of some of the other items that they originally requested. It's also possible and perhaps likely that it was strictly an oversight that they had included the curies and the volume for this item. They just accidentally left it off their waste description.
See anybody on from TVA that could answer that
Right.
question.
And
That was
there's
gonna be
nobody
my
on,
question.
there's nobody from TVA online to answer the question, so.
I do know, Commissioner Sudak, I can answer for you that this was an oversight on their part that they did not include it in their waste description. So they may have given themselves somewhat of a margin of error in their curie request and their volume request, and this inclusion would not take them over what they'd already requested before.
I guess, they should mention that. If they kind of say, well, we just want to chuck in a heat exchanger. If it doesn't change the volume and curie count, I would think they would have mentioned it, or at least, or of course the TCEQ's all over this, so I assume they would mention it.
It definitely does not change their volume or curie request amount under the agreement that the commission has already granted to them. This was an oversight on their part when they requested their original application. They had not anticipated heat exchanger being part of the waste stream and had not asked for that as part of the waste stream. And our rules require if you add anything to the waste stream that be an amendment considered by the full commission.
But you're telling me that they have sufficient margin in what they originally had, that this comes within the curie count and the volume.
Yes,
I mean, do we know that? Did they?
Yes, they verified that, and I've actually had a conversation with waste control specialists as well that will be in the bounds of the agreement that they currently have to add that heat exchanger.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the vice chairman? And while we're waiting on that, we'll note that Commissioner Bradford has joined us. I also note on the sidebar that we have been joined by Commissioner Bobby Janeka, and we want to welcome both of them. Are there any other questions of the vice chairman related to the amendment request of TVA? Hearing none, I think we can move on to a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the Tennessee Valley Authority Amendment Request number 1-0361-01. And this amendment will be to add heat exchanger to the waste description.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Commissioner Bradford. Any further discussion or questions about the amendment request of Tennessee Valley Authority? Any public comment on the amendment request of Tennessee Valley Authority? Again, if you're online, please use the raise your hand function.
He's on.
Yes.
I see no one's hands raised, Chairman.
Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the amendment request of Tennessee Valley Authority represented in item 5 on our agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion passes. And that is our only import request / amendment for our agenda today. So we can now move on to item 6, which is the Rules Committee report. And before we turn it over to Commissioner Morris, let me stop and say what I think everyone already knows, and that is Commissioner Morris and Vice Chairman Salzman have put in an amazing amount of work into the management rule. They have gone way above and beyond the call of duty on this. It is significant to those of you that are impacted by it. I think we grasp that and appreciate it. And Commissioner Morris and Vice Chairman Salzman have really done yeoman's work in trying to take everyone's suggestions and issues into account. It has been a long time coming, and it has gone through a lot of iterations. But with that, I will turn it over to the chairman of our Rules Committee, Commissioner Morris, to give us a report.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And it's not just John and I, it's also the rest of the Rules Committee, Dick Saudick and yourself. So thank you very much. Anyway, so kind of to update everyone and what we plan to do. The packet that you received just a few days ago, the updated packet, contained the latest version of the draft revision. I want to maybe make a comment that there haven't been many changes from the version of the draft rule that was placed on our website. So there have been some, for example, some of the changes include, let's see, the reporting date was changed from 7 days to 15 days. That was due to the regulated companies of regulated sites having time to input data. So that recommendation was made. It still requires a monthly reporting period. And anyway, our council recently reviewed the proposed changes and made made additional changes for clarification, but they were not what I would consider major. So once published, if the commission so recommends, the public comments, of course, will be the 30-day public comment period will be open, and we would appreciate any further comments and we'll respond to them as needed. So again, thank you for everyone that has provided feedback into this rule revision. We really appreciate it. And with those comments, that's all I have.
I made a horrible mistake at the beginning of the meeting. I forgot to thank and welcome our substitute attorney general today, Helen Kelly. Ms. Kelly, thank you for attending. I should have said that at the very beginning. I am so sorry. The reason I bring it up now is because does anyone have any questions about the APA, Administrative Procedure Act process that we're about to go into with this management rule of Ms. Kelly before we move forward? It is somewhat it is confusing or potentially confusing because we have been going through this and taking informal comments, but what we are, I believe, about to vote on is publishing it in the Texas Register, and then there's a formal comment period. So this is we've kind of belt and suspended ourselves here in that we've taken informal comments, but now will be a formal comment period. They will be submitted in writing. They'll be posted. They may require a response from us. And so I want to make sure everybody knows kind of how this process is going and the timeline. But other than that, are there any other questions? Are there any other questions of, I'm sorry, Commissioner Saudick?
Let me just make sure I understand. I tell you, we're good, that if we vote to publish this, we will be going on to the next step. And that in turn invites any comments, and then I believe we have to meet those comments. We have to describe why we either we'll change it, or we agree with the comments, or we disagree with the comments. I take it we have to, in other words, in Vermont, and I think in Texas, it's mandatory to basically respond to every comment. Is that right?
And that's really a question for Ms. Kelly. I thought there were certain comments, if they were of a non-substantive nature, that we didn't have to respond to, but Helen may be the right person to answer that question.
I think best practice would be to respond to every comment. The amount of response may not necessarily be the same if it is not relevant. Say someone makes a comment that's kind of off topic, we can say that, but if it is something that pertains to the rule or would affect the rule, usually the agency will agree or disagree and then provide their reasoning for that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Kelly, but can't we aggregate a response, aggregate comments and respond to one time to those?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Any other
So-
questions about the process or of Commissioner Morris?
If not, I would like to, representing the Rules Committee, formally recommend that that the Compact Commission move on to publish this draft rule in the Texas Register.
Second.
Federal Register.
There is a motion from the committee and a recommendation and a second. Any further discussion about the current draft of Texas Administrative Code 675.24 that is proposed for publication in the Texas Register? Any public comment about the motion to approve the current draft for publication in the Texas Register?
See any hands raised, Chairman?
All right, we can move on to a vote. All in favor of the motion from the Rules Committee to publish the current draft included in your packet of Texas Administrative Code 675.24 in the Texas Register, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Linda, did you want to say something about future potential rules?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Another rule that might come up for review is 675.25, which is our small quantity generator set aside. There had been some comments about whether we need to increase the allowed set aside from 2,000 curies to another higher value. I would note that the current rule, the way it's written now and currently in effect, allows the Compact Commission by majority rule to temporarily increase that 2,000 curie limit for the current fiscal year if the Compact Commission so thinks that that's needed. So with that in mind, so that we already have that capability to do that. There's been some questions or comments, should we have a volume set aside too? So those are some things that the Rules Committee might look at in the future, but keep in mind that we can raise that 2,000 curie limit simply by a majority vote of the Compact Commission. So anyway, so that's the only comment I want to say about that.
Thank you. And that's an important point, and I'm glad you pointed it out. The rules process is kind of a never-ending task because we are constantly evolving and reacting to the things we've learned, especially as it relates to capacity issues like the small quantity generator set aside. I do think that is something that it will kind of perpetually be on the Rules Committee agenda. And the issue of a volume set aside obviously has kind of come to the forefront as a result of some of our other discussions about capacity, which we will potentially get to in just a moment. But it is, commissioners, if in your reading the rules, if you have opinions about these things and you are not on the Rules Committee, please feel free to contact any of us on the Rules Committee. Like I said, it is definitely an organic and ongoing process. So if there's other things that we believe we need to address, I know that in the past, Commissioner Mundy, as chairman of the contingency committee, has come forward and brought ideas for the rules that were very critical. And I think that's how the process should work. So with that being said, I want to once again thank Commissioner Morris and everyone else on the Rules Committee for their work. And this is not the end of this process with the management rule, but it is definitely a major step in getting us to the conclusion. So I appreciate everyone's participation and willingness to support as we go through. Anything else, Linda, before we move on?
No, thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the Capacity Committee report. As you probably all noticed, Lisa is not here. She's traveling for work. Because we had to move the meeting, it ended up making it where she could not come, and she is the chairman of that committee. So I think we will defer any report to the next meeting. I know they are making progress, and I appreciate all the hard work they're doing. which once again is Lisa and Linda. So Linda gets 2 gold stars today. But it is again a critical issue. I think not so much that we think we're at the end of our capacity by any means, but it's a critical mission that we have good metrics and good measuring sticks and are prepared as we get busier at the site and as we do come to points where capacity may be an issue, because as I harp on every time we talk, our primary mission is to regulate the import of out of compact waste to protect capacity for our in compact generators. So capacity really should be at the top of our list always. And we've been somewhat blessed in that for the first several years that the site was open in Andrews, capacity just wasn't. But what we can see now is that at some point in the future, capacity could be an issue, and we need to be prepared for it to make sure we're doing our job. So with that, we can move on to item 8, which I realize I did not even ask Commissioner Mundy if he wanted to do a contingency plan report, but I will turn it over to him for the contingency plan committee report.
Fortunately for you, no, I have no new information, so we're good.
Okay. Item 9 is an important issue that we have not, obviously we don't regularly have on our agenda. Without rehashing all the facts, there was an issue that came up with Aileron, and they had a pending application before us. It was denied based on some investigation that we did and some of the information they provided. But as part of that denial, we agreed that Stephen and Vice Chairman Salzman would go and do an audit of their operations and practices. They completed that audit. They turned it around very quickly, which we appreciate their diligence. They did that in January. And before I turn it over to Stephen and Vice Chairman Salzman to give us their report on the audit, I will note for everyone that Aileron has refiled an application. It's everybody knows it has to be on file for 35 days before we can consider it. So as of today's meeting, it has not been 35 days. So it is not up for consideration today, but it will be at our next meeting in April. So obviously it was important that we got the audit done and have this report that Stephen and John are about to provide us. So all of you can take that into account in deciding how you want to vote on the renewed application of Aileron. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Vice Chairman and Stephen for a report on what they determined out of the audit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll provide some general information about the audit, and then I'll go into more details. But January 17th through 20, Stephen and I traveled to Pittsburgh. The Aileron offices are located about 30 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. During that time, we made 2 trips to the Aileron offices and spent basically 8 hours each day reviewing records. So going into some of the details of that, we actually reviewed 33 file folders of information. Some of them contained maybe half a dozen pages. Some of them contained perhaps 100 or more pages. So the process was tedious and lengthy. And here's some additional details. I guess the first thing I want to say is that we very much appreciate the openness and willingness of Aileron to allow us to come in, review the records. They were great hosts, provided us a conference room that was lockable, and we were the only ones that had the key. So we were able to keep our information confidential, if you will. We conducted a number of interviews in our review, and I can quickly go through and tell you we interviewed Dwayne McLean, who's the vice president with Aileron. We interviewed Mike Unruh, who is a project manager for them, and provided us a good description of some IT changes that they've made. Julian Owak, who was the radiation safety officer, Dave Puhala, which is their main shipper of radioactive waste, Jill Rayburn, who's the QA manager at the facility, Henry Boland, who's a corporate QA individual, and then Dave Gilson, who is the relatively new, I think he had been there a couple of weeks to perhaps a month. He is the new general manager of Alaron facility. Those interviews were open and candid and actually very helpful in helping us to understand the nature of what took place. All the records that we actually requested in advance were provided, with the exception of one file folder, which they were never able to locate. It was actually a file folder on a shipment that they had received of material. We were able to see the file folder for where that material was shipped out of the facility to Texas. So I think it was just they keep the file folders, other than those they are immediately dealing with, at another location which is, I think they said 20 or 30 minutes away or something like that. And perhaps it was still there. They couldn't find it. And I don't think there was any particular issue with that. So to summarize what we talked to Alaron about at the end of our review, I believe our view of those records confirmed everything that Alaron has indicated to us in writing and verbally to date. My perspective was the records do not indicate that there was a malicious attempt to fool the commission or to circumvent the rules. They ended up doing that, but it does not appear that there was a malicious intent. And the reason I make that statement was, when you reviewed the files, the audit trail is clear. It's very clear. If they were trying to hide something, the audit trail they created made it very clear that they made mistakes. It's all there. So there was nothing in the records to indicate that they were trying to hide anything. Rather, I think what happened was, it was really a lack of controls in their process, procedures, oversight, QA, all those things. There was a failure, which allowed this creation of records that were not accurate to be created, if you will. I think in the end, it became easier for them to attribute the waste to themselves rather than to attribute it to the people that actually generated the waste. The original process that they had, where they showed us the records, it never really forced people who were sending them waste to also send a generator authorization. And so I think at the crux of it, with poor QA and poor processes in place, and a failure to actually make that one of the requirements, in many cases, they never got a generator authorization from people who are sending them the waste. And I would note that the problems that occurred were in shipments that they received directly from a generator. So there were times when, if company X sent material directly to Alaron, they still didn't send a generator authorization. So there were times when brokers handled the waste and they did not send generator authorizations. And I'm talking about external brokers. And then there were times when Veolia, acting as a broker, sent waste to Alaron and they didn't obtain the generator authorization. So
I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say generator authorization, what specifically?
That means that generator authorization is a document that we require, that if an entity sends waste to us, they are required to send a generator authorization if someone else is handling that waste, so that we know, in fact, who that waste came from.
Thank you.
And that the generator recognizes that it's being disposed of, but they are shipping it to someone else to dispose of it on their behalf.
That's what I thought. I just.
Right.
wanted- And I'm sorry I interrupted. but-
Oh,
No, no.
no, it's a good question. So the pattern was the same, whether it was directly from a generator, through a third-party broker, or through their own, I would say, internal broker, Veolia. There were mistakes made, and they were the same kinds of mistakes that were made over and over and over again. Next, I would note that the issues that I've just described were appropriately documented in what they call a CAR, which is a corrective action request. That CAR included, and actually there was more than one, included a retraining, and that's documented, of all the people that handle the waste or make the shipments. So first you recognize the issue, you describe the issue, you describe a fix to the issue, and then you have to retrain everyone so that the issue does not reoccur. The corrective actions that they have taken to prevent a reoccurrence include a new proposal template. And what that means is if an entity approaches Aileron to handle some of their waste, they get a written proposal for what will happen. Well, they've changed that template for that proposal to make it clear in writing that generator authorizations, and if there are any export authorizations that are needed, those are required to be provided, right? That's in the proposal. It says they will not handle your waste. We will not handle your waste unless you provide these documents to us. They also issued a directive concerning the use of that new proposal template, which was an improvement over the old template, if you will. They've developed a process, and frankly, I can't remember the name. It's called ASN, but it's basically an electronic database that they have created, and we had a long discussion about that, where when they begin to receive the information after they make a proposal and they agree that, yes, this company is going to send them the waste, it's the electronic database that they use to receive and store all the information for that shipment. It includes the detail, minute detail of everything that's coming in, and there's a place for the generator authorization and the export authorization to be electronically stored, whether they get them electronically or they get a hard copy piece of paper. There's a process where they can attach that document electronically to the database so that any future review, audit, check, or whatever, you can physically go and look and see all the record for that shipment.
And I might add, Vice Chairman, that's required before the shipping will be received, that all that documentation be provided.
Correct.
In their system.
Their process, it's very clear now. Until they receive in advance all those documents, they cannot accept actual shipment of the waste. If it were to arrive at their site and all those documents are not present, their process says they cannot accept shipment of that material until those documents are provided. And we had a long discussion about that as well. Part of their process also added another review by Dave Puhala, who is the main shipper, to ensure that before they begin the repackaging of that waste, they do another check to make sure all those documents are present. So they can't accept it for receipt, and then they can't repackage it till they make another check to make sure all the documents are present. They've instituted monthly QA surveillance by the QA people, and then a quarterly surveillance by the corporate QA to go in and look and check both the receipt paperwork and the shipment paperwork to ensure that all the documents are present. We had a long discussion with Dave Gilson about the culture change that he is working to institute. Now, obviously, to change the culture takes time, but it became apparent in our discussions that that is a focus, a safety and compliance culture. He readily admitted probably wasn't there in the past, but it will be there now. At least that's his intention. They have limited the number of people who are allowed to sign off. There are 2 individuals and only 2 who can sign off on the shipment of waste to Texas. Now other individuals can send waste to other places, but for Texas, there's only 2 people, Julian Owak and Dave Pupola. Julian's the RSO, Dave's the lead shipper for all radioactive waste.
And I might add, they added a secondary check. There'll be a secondary check of those shippers
Yes.
before it is removed as well, which is
There are
Federal Patrol.
There are a number of checks and rechecks to ensure that the proper paperwork is being provided. And I would also add that this issue has received attention by Veolia corporate, including corporate leadership from France who made a trip to Pittsburgh to the facility and had discussions with Dave Gilson, the new general manager. And based on our discussions, it's clear that they're taking this issue seriously and they are giving him whatever resources he needs to ensure that the problem is not repeated. I think I've probably hit the highlights. As I said, we reviewed 33 packages of records. Typically, those were either the incoming shipment where Aileron received the material. It would have a manifest, who it came from, things like that. We found one case where they failed to provide the generator authorization, and as a result, they attributed the waste to Aileron, and yet they actually had the document in their file. So the generator authorization, for whatever reason, when they shipped the waste to Texas, they couldn't find it, so they attributed the waste to Aileron, but the record was actually in their file. They were unable to locate it. So again, I point that out as I don't believe this was malicious. I believe this was a matter of poor practice, poor SOPs, and a failure to train people appropriately on the requirement for compliance. So I've said enough. Stephen, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I want to add, one of the things that became very clear in the meetings with Aileron is that there is a general lack of awareness that our commission needs to work on about how liability is different in Texas as opposed to other disposal sites. The state of Texas assumes liability for all the waste that's disposed of at that site because it's a commercial site. It was part of the agreement the legislature made. Aileron was not aware of that, and that is something that the commission needs to remedy themselves, that the liability chain is different with a site here in Texas than it is with others. And that awareness was increased as part of the discussion that we had with Aileron, and something that we could probably work on with general wellness with other brokers and waste processors and even generators actually throughout the country, that they know how that process works differently for us. I see we have
I'll put a footnote on that. Just because Texas accepts ultimate ownership of it does not relieve the original generator, anybody in the chain, of liability under CERCLA.
Correct, and I think that was they did not realize that we continue that liability, so they are not absolved.
Yes.
And it's also why it's significant that we keep that chain intact.
Absolutely.
And that is accurate. Mr. Burnham Chairman, Mr. Burnham would like to ask a question.
Okay. If you'd remind him to unmute that mic at the podium.
Our technical advisor Shrum's on it.
Thank you to the technical assistant that unmuted me. And I want to thank Mr. Salzman for a very, very thorough report. We appreciate it very much. I would say I never really thought it was malicious, but sometimes you wonder if it's deliberate. I don't think they have any ill will towards us. I'm really relieved to hear your report. Particularly, I like the acronym CAR, Corrective Actions. It's very appropriate, and thank you for your report.
Thank you, Representative Burnham.
Are there other questions or comments?
Well, first of all, let me start with the commissioners. Are there any questions from the commissioners of John and Stephen about their audit? Any questions from anyone online or in the audience?
There is a comment, Chairman Hurley, Rich Gennady put a Q&A in. He said, thanks. My recommendation is to have the audit findings documented in a brief report. Mr. Gennady works for the Compact where Aileron is actually located up in the Appalachian area.
And let me address that one. And we will take Rich's recommendation into consideration. I did not think it was appropriate to document anything in writing. This was obviously the report does not come with a formal recommendation one way or another from the people who performed the report, and therefore I think obviously it is simply meant to be a source of information for commissioners. This is not necessarily something that is part of an ongoing investigation. It is simply to provide the commission information on which to make future decisions. As I said earlier, there is now a pending application from Aileron, and I think this kind of information is what I, as a commissioner, and hopefully the rest of you as commissioners, want to hear about in making the determination on how we respond or how we vote on that next that next application from Aileron. So I don't think, and John and Stephen, I'll ask you guys if you agree. I don't think there is a reason to reduce this to a written report.
I don't think that is necessary unless the commission would like to have that documented for their own internal purposes. There's no external reason for us to actually produce a written report.
There's a couple of hands raised, Stephen. The first one is Dwayne McLean from Aileron. So,
and we have, and Ms. Haddon with the Seat Coalition would like to speak as well.
Okay.
Who would you like to have go first?
Let's let Karen go first, and then we'll go to Dwayne.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tim.
Sure.
Hi.
Let me mute you. There we go. Perfect.
Now
Good,
go.
good, Karen.
Hi, I had one question that came up while you were talking. You said that there was contact with corporate leadership from France. Can you elaborate a little bit on the structure, and in France, are they also known as Aileron?
In France, the parent company is Veolia,
Okay, yes.
and Veolia owns Aileron. They bought Aileron 10 years ago, something like that. And so the leadership, the corporate leadership for Veolia, which is located in France, came to the United States and went to the Aileron facility to discuss the issues of this that we found.
Okay, and so they're known as Veolia in France.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
And I
thank
believe
you.
In the United States as well. They're
Yes,
a
right.
worldwide company.
Right, okay.
Ms. Haddon, I believe Mr. McLean, who's going to speak after you, works for Veolia, so he can probably answer that question in more detail,
Okay.
maybe more accurately than Mr. Salzman and I can actually.
And has there been any other investigation other than this that you conducted, which is greatly appreciated?
Not that I'm aware of.
I would add in, Mr. Gennady, who was on earlier, can comment, but Pennsylvania has also looked in their Department of Environmental. Sure, I'm stating that wrong, Rich, but their equivalent of TCEQ has looked into this as well on behalf of the state of Pennsylvania and their regulation of Aileron.
And I hate to be difficult, but on behalf of the public, I do think it would be great if some kind of report was written up, even if it was fairly brief. I think that would be useful for the future when somebody looks back and, wasn't here or missed it or something like that.
Can we have somebody transcribe John's oral report?
That would be great.
This is recorded and will be online, but we could have it
Yeah,
transcribed.
have a written transcription and save that in our records for our time.
That would be great.
We can
Thank
do that
you.
if you want to do that, Chairman Hurley. We can talk about that,
I think that-
about having a
I
transcript.
think we can discuss
Thanks.
it. That may be a good idea.
Chairman. Go ahead.
I think that we can definitely discuss that, because that may be a good idea, and obviously this meeting is always recorded as well, but a transcription of it may be a good idea. I had a quick idea. I see that Ron Gaynor from the Southwest Compact also has his hand raised. So in light of the fact that his questions may need to be addressed by Mr. McLean, I thought maybe we'd call on Ron first and then let Dwayne go after that to kind of summarize their position and answer any questions that he may need to answer.
You got it, Mr. Gaynor. You are now a panelist, and just unmute yourself and you can speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thanks, gentlemen, for your work. And maybe you said this, but it wasn't clear to me. Even though the original generator wasn't provided, are you saying that they do actually have records of the actual generator and origin of the wastes for these shipments?
They have. You want me to answer that, or you want to answer it?
Ron, yes, Aileron has a receipt record for every item of radioactive material, each item of radioactive material or waste that they received, and that subsequently they shipped to the Texas facility. So they know where it came from.
There
Okay,
were
thank you
generator
very much.
authorization. Okay, go ahead. Is that all you had, Ron?
Just thank you very much.
You may have Mr. McLean speak now, Chairman.
And before Mr. McLean speaks, I want to reiterate something that I think John's already said, but we appreciate the way that Aileron and Veolia has handled this. It doesn't necessarily change what happened, but we do appreciate their forthrightness, their willingness to allow us to do this audit, the conditions that they provided for the audit, and the way they responded to everything we asked for. I think this process went much smoother because of the way they reacted to our requests, and I think it was a somewhat collaborative and very productive process. So with that, I will let Mr. McLean, who is from Veolia, answer any questions he wants to answer and make any comments he wants to make.
Thanks, Mr. Hurley. I'd like to start off by expressing our appreciation for Mr. Salzman and oh gee whiz, I just went brain dead.
Mr. Raines, I think.
Thank you,
Mr. Raines.
Yes, Mr. Raines. Funny how that happens, isn't it? So we opened up our doors to them, and they were very gracious in how they handled themselves. We welcomed them as best we could in the facility, and we do appreciate the thoroughness that they did in their audit. And I just want to express, again, my appreciation. And this is from both Aileron Nuclear Services as well as Veolia, that the commission's patience, understanding, and recognizing what we needed to do. It was a pleasure working with them and with the commission. I do believe that throughout all of this, which really started back in March of last year, in the end, the issues that we identified along the way over the last 9-10 months has led us to a place where we have very, very strong systems now. We took it as an opportunity to say, we can't allow this to happen again. This isn't how we want to do business, and use that opportunity to really put some really strong measures in place to prevent recurrence. And hopefully the things that we put in place, both electronically as well as procedurally, and use of our QA program has really positioned us, I believe, to be in a great place. But once again, thanks to the commission, and thanks to the commissioners that came out. So I'm here to answer any other questions. I know there was one about Veolia corporate. So Veolia is actually a very, very large company worldwide. It's based out of France. Veolia Nuclear Nuclear Solutions Federal Services, which is our company here in the U.S., is part of Veolia. Aileron was previously owned by Veolia North America. They're also part of the Veolia umbrella out of France, but separate from us. And I know there was a couple comments that John made about Veolia performing brokering activities. that was Veolia North America. But again, we're all part of Veolia. So we're a small division here in the US that we really concentrate on the nuclear work, as well as a lot of our work is with the government as well, with the Department of Energy. Our business line from France was very interested and has been interested in this issue from day one. And like John mentioned, he came out and looked at what the issues were, what we identified, and the things that we were putting in place. But again, it goes to show that, you know, it went from really locally at Aileron Nuclear Services, and then got to my office around, May, June last year. And then it's gone all the way up to the highest levels in our company. So again, our commitment to getting this right is first and foremost. And then I think there was a question from Southwest Compact, Mr. Gaynor. So John did mention that, you know, all of the records of the generators and where the material came from had always been with Aileron. And unfortunately, you know, we weren't transferring that over to the proper generator authorizations. But again, our programs were weak and our procedures really didn't lead us into making sure that happened, but they do now. So, but yes, so Mr. Gaynor, we have all of the generators as well as where the material comes from.
Commissioners, are there any other questions of Mr. McLean from any of you? Any more questions from the public about this audit process that John and Stephen have just completed?
I would, Chairman, I would point out Ms. Gosley put in a Q in the QA that she thought Ms. Haddon's request to have a transcript would be a good idea for the report, and she's put that in the QA portion of our Zoom meeting, just for everyone else to know. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gosley. We will. I think we will definitely try to do that through whatever process we need to use on that. We can hire a transcriptionist or maybe do it some other way with advances in technology. Anyone else have questions for Mr. McLean or questions in general? Mr. Ford, Michael Ford has raised his hand and he would like to speak as well. Chairman Ford, we will call on you now. If you will please state your name and who you're representing today.
Yes, this is Mike Ford. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm just representing myself. And I was just in general context, the vice chairman sounds like, and the executive director of both had a very thorough report. And I would really strongly, given the legal nature that this could potentially have, I would just strongly recommend that if you just reduce it to writing to a letter to the chair, to Chairman Hurley, then I would I think that would probably suffice in terms of an overall report. But given the fact that it's of a legal nature, you would probably want to have that as opposed to a transcript.
Thank you very much, Chairman Ford. We appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Again, I'll make one last call to the commissioners. Anyone have a question before Mr. McLean leaves? Again, I'd like to thank him for his appearing here today, answering our questions, being an open book. I'd also like to note that this was a very deliberate and methodical process. And sometimes I feel like, boy, we're taking too long, but I don't think we did on this one. This was kind of uncharted territory for us. It was a very important issue. We wanted to get it right and be fair to all sides, but be thorough. And I think this audit was kind of the culmination of all those efforts. These things always generally take longer than you expect anyway, but I think both Stephen and Megan and obviously John have done amazing work on this. And I think we have now provided to the commission, a real plethora of information that each one of you can now take in and use however you deem fit in making future decisions about Aileron's applications that come before us. As a reminder, we are obviously an entity that has limited staff and limited budget. And so I think we were extremely efficient in the sense that we didn't have to hire anyone outside of our group to do this. And that is due in large part to John and Stephen being willing to take some of their personal time and travel to Pittsburgh and do this. So again, I want to thank them. I think, again, kind of like the rules process, this is an ongoing issue that I think if you have any questions, if this, after digesting this information, if you have follow-ups, please direct those to Stephen, and he can hopefully get them answered. I will remind everyone that at the next meeting, the Aileron application the renewed Aileron application will be before us. So this is important for everyone to kind of think through and come to their own conclusions about. And if anyone else has questions, like I said, please direct them to Stephen. With that, we can close the book on item 9, and we can move on to item 10, which is a report from WCS. I did not know if Chris or Ryan would be the one that would provide that report, because I know Dave is not available today. So whichever one of you wants to. Oh, looks like it's Ryan. Okay. I will recognize Ryan Williams from WCS.
Mr. Williams, you're on. Just unmute yourself. You can talk.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Ryan Williams, WCS, Vice President Licensing and Technical Services. So for the current fiscal year, September 1st, 2022 through the August 31st, 2023 deadline, for Incompact, we've disposed of 14,869 cubic feet and 1,203 curies. And that's for Incompact. And for out of compact, we have disposed of 15,804 cubic feet and 37,002 curies. Again, that's for current Texas fiscal year. The prior Texas fiscal year that ended August 31st, 2022, for Incompact, we disposed of 9,298 cubic feet and 10,156 curies. For out of compact, we disposed of, for prior fiscal year, 26,942 cubic feet and 102,000 curies. Looks like totals through the end of January 2023, total volume is 284,025 cubic feet, which is approximately 3.2% of our current license capacity. And total curies was 553,099 curies decayed, which is approximately 26% of the license capacity. We still have currently constructed 450,000 cubic feet of the 9 million license capacity capability. And for quarterly payments, WCS has made payments to TCEQ in the sum of $1,436,956. To Andrews County, $330,575. And the total since inception that we've made to TCEQ is $72,238,482. And to Andrews County, it's $16,702,278 for a grand total of almost $89 million in total fees paid. I think that's all the information that I had to provide. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Williams from WCS?
I have some.
Commissioner Mundy.
Yeah, Mr. Williams, I have a handful of questions. Can you repeat again, how much remaining volume is there for the actually constructed facility?
So we have, so actual constructed right now is roughly 450 cubic feet is the current phase. And we've disposed of to date roughly 84,000 cubic feet. So we're a little over, from a volume perspective, a little over half of that.
Yeah, so it's remaining 150, 60,000 cubic feet remaining.
Roughly, yes.
Okay. Couple of questions. We early in our first meeting of the fiscal year approved, let me find it here, a couple of them, really high volumes, which I'm going to ask, you don't have to answer today, but the next meeting, see, where is it? Holtec had made a request for 80,000 cubic feet, and so far has made just a minimal actual shipment. At the next meeting, could you check and give us a forecast of how much realistically you expect that will come through the gates of that? And let's see, I think Westinghouse had 25,000 cubic feet approved, again with a minimal shipment. So for those two, could you kind of do a status check and report to us at the next meeting on how much you really expect they're going to ship through the gates? Because I don't need an answer right now. And then a couple other on the Curie side of the equation. Entergy Grand Gulf, we approved 160,000 Curies, and so far none of that is shipped. I would ask for a kind of a forecast as best you can do on that. Let's see, Unitech had 75,000 approved Curies and with nothing shipped. So if you would check on those and give us an update on what you think is going to happen for the second half of our year. Those are all my questions. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. We'll look into those. And just to be clear, it's forecasting through the end of fiscal year ending August 31st, 2023.
Right. Yeah, we're about roughly halfway through our year. So, you know, trying to get a handle. So in case we get into, we want to know what's coming so we don't get in a tight bind at the end of the year.
Understood.
I would add for you, Commissioner Rooney, we know Entergy Grand Gulf has already shipped quite a bit, and they are shipping some more next month, or scheduled to.
Any other questions for Mr. Williams before we let him go?
I know there in the QA, Chairman, Ms. Gosley had a question about whether WCS was going to submit another report. They do submit monthly reports to us. We could point that out that is submitted to the commission.
And some of that information is confidential that cannot be disclosed to the public. The other report that has recently come in relates to the current version of the management rule, and we will remove anything that is deemed confidential in that, and otherwise make that available to the public as well. Commissioner Sadick.
I'm wondering whether there is any further information on their plans to build out the facility, given that, well, it's not really tight yet, but it's getting up there. Do you have anything on a calendar, on a continuum into the future?
Yes, we are currently working on the planning and construction of our next phase, which will be roughly another 425,000 cubic feet, give or take, depending on the type of waste that we receive.
When do you have a kind of a preliminary timetable on that?
Construction will begin shortly, and the completed licensing phase will probably be sometime in 2024.
Any other questions for Mr. Williams? Seeing none, we will thank you very much, Mr. Williams, for your report, and we can move on. The next item on the agenda is the chairman's report. I know Dan Schrum is there in person, so I would ask him to come up and tell us about the next in-person forum meeting, because I know it's not too far away.
He's our technical advisor, so we'll let him unmute himself up there.
He's got no one to blame but himself.
How's that? Yeah, the next forum meeting will be in. Oh, I'm Dan Schrum with the Low Level Radioactive Waste Forum, also known as Tech Support. The next forum meeting will be in Charleston, South Carolina, March 22nd and 23rd, with the Disused Source Working Group meeting on the 24th. The hotel is full, but there are other hotels nearby. If you've not been to Charleston, it's a beautiful place to be, especially in the spring. I encourage you to attend, but we've got a great agenda. And if you'd like to see the agenda, just go to our website and the agenda is right there. Okay.
Will there be an opportunity for a site visit there?
Yeah, we're going to Barnwell. I'm sorry. Absolutely. We're going to Barnwell on the 21st of March. So we'll drive out to Barnwell, see what that facility looks like. And then, and actually, we're also trying to schedule a lab visit. So GEL is located in Charleston, South Carolina. They're probably the largest provider of laboratory services to the nuclear industry. And we're going to go visit their lab also.
And I would note for anyone, if you want to really understand the difference between the WCS facility and other facilities, a visit to Barnwell will be a real eye opener.
Yes, it will.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schrum. Again, the item here says both the low-level forum and communication with other compacts. We do stay in regular communication with the other compacts. The issue that we've just been discussing for so long with Aileron was a result of a communication like that with other compacts. So that communication is still critical. And as I noted at the beginning, we have several people from other compacts in attendance with us today, and we appreciate that. And we think that nothing but good can come from us continuing to stay in close contact with those other compacts and work with them to address issues that affect all of us. So we appreciate the forum and the other compact leaders and what they do. The next item in my report is a legislative update. And this is going to sound very strange because this is the first time in many, many sessions I can say this. As of right now, there are absolutely no bills that have been filed that have anything to do with low-level nuclear waste. That's interesting in a lot of ways, but we are still in the sunset process, which I'm sure Stephen will mention. There may be a sunset bill that comes out specifically related to us. We may be included with the TCEQ sunset bill. However, other than that, and there's still time to file bills. We are still in the first month and a half of our legislative session, but as of right now, there are no bills filed. We will continue, obviously, to educate all of our elected officials here in Texas and in Vermont as to our needs and issues, including our budget issues, which Stephen and John also recently testified about before the Senate Finance Committee. But otherwise, it is relatively quiet on the legislative front. If that changes, obviously, we will let all of you know. We always offer ourselves as a resource to any of the committees of the Texas House or Senate, or for that matter, the Vermont legislature, if they would like us to be a resource on the issues that we cover. As of right now, it doesn't look like that may happen this year. So take that for what it is. Some of you may think that's good. Some of you may think that's bad. But that is the legislative report. Finally, in my report, I want to comment about the administration committee and Commissioner Nyack and thank her for her leadership. As I think Stephen's probably going to talk about here in a minute, they've had their first success, and that is finding us a new office. And it was a real win, and I'll let Stephen explain all that. But we really appreciate Commissioner Nyack and her leadership on that. And I think the administration committee will continue to address a lot of the issues that are going to come up because they are always there, whether it's space or office issues or anything else to do with our contract professionals or anything in between. So we want to just note that they are out there doing their work and tell them that we appreciate their efforts. And with that, I think that's the end of the chairman's report. So I will move on to item 12, which is our executive director's report.
Well, thank you for that, Chairman. I'll start out with a discussion about our office space. We have located and have already actually paid the first month's rent and our deposit on our new office space. The new office space for everyone is going to be at 1501 West Avenue. If you're familiar with the Austin area, that is the Caswell House, not the one where a lot of receptions go on, but is the Caswell House that business offices are going to be at. We really appreciate Commissioner Nyack and Megan were really helpful in us finding a new office space. It should provide a space that's better, I think, for the commission's interest in that it is not a 15-story building with parking garages and better accessibility for us, and some cost savings as well for the commission also for our monthly rent costs. So we really appreciate that. We will not move into that office until February the 26th because of which I guess a week and a half for us from now, but that's due to some concerns over getting availability for us to actually make the physical move and move office space from one to another. But some of you have seen some pictures of the new office space, but if you have any questions about that or would like to see us as we move in, be more than happy to answer them.
And for those of you who have stayed in the DoubleTree that's kind of behind and to the side of the Capitol, it's further down that street. So it is convenient, especially for those of you that may come in and stay at that DoubleTree. Is my wife will attest. I am by my nature very cheap, and I am ecstatic about the fact that we are going to have a significant cost savings from the move, and we can deploy that part of our budget for other things like attendance at conferences and travel and things that are important for all of the commissioners. So I think this has been a huge win for us. And again, I want to thank Stephen and Megan and Commissioner Nyack for really putting in the laboring oar to get this all done.
I might add, I didn't say this earlier, Chairman, they do have a conference room space, which the building has multiple tenants in it as well, but there's a law firm upstairs and a very nice conference room that we could actually use to have commission meetings in the future if that is needed. Though it would be a little bit smaller space than we've been using in the past, but it could be useful for that as well.
Room for public.
Yes.
All right.
Secondly, I would like to talk about the Sunset Advisory Commission review. We have finished that review. That was completed, and we went through strategic fiscal review with the Legislative Budget Board last year. There were no recommendations for changes from the Sunset review process by the Commission. Their only recommendation was that this commission be up for review again with TCEQ in 12 years during the next scheduled sunset review of TCEQ. Other than that, there were no recommendations for changes, which is a very positive review for us, about it that you can ask for, that there are no changes recommended. That being said, because this commission cannot be abolished because it's created by an act from the federal government, what happens legislatively from here on out is somewhat in question as to whether there will be a bill on this commission, or they'll just schedule us again, or if we'll be included in the discussion about TCEQ sunset in the legislation relative to that. We don't know the answer to that, and that may be being answered here in the near future by the members of the Sunset Commission that are members of the legislature. But it's as good a report as we could ask for in that they recommended no changes to us.
And I will add to that. I know there was a lot of discussion and maybe even some trepidations about the sunset process when we started this, and we talked about what a major undertaking it is, and it was. To end up with no recommendations is, as Stephen said, a good thing, because it's the old duck analogy of, what was happening under the surface was paddling very fast and doing a lot of work to provide the Sunset Commission staff with all the information they needed. And it was a healthy process for us to go through, because it forces us to review some of our own internal operating procedures and the way we conduct our business, which is something that no one wants to do. And so being forced to do it periodically is very healthy. And I hope that we kind of take some of the lessons that we learned from the sunset process and continue to actively review our processes on an ongoing basis. And and in the end, I know that after so much discussion and gnashing of teeth about the sunset process, it kind of feels like it's going out with a whimper. But that's really not the way it is. It was still a very involved and deeply rooted process. And it just turns out that there was no recommendations for us, which, as Stephen said, is really a sign that I think we are operating the way we should, knowing that we can always make some improvements. And so I'm very happy with the outcome of it. And again, I thank Stephen and Megan for all the work they did in kind of guiding us through that process.
I'd like to add one thing, Chairman. We did get something I want to pass on to the rest of the commission. The Sunset staffs was very glad that you have gone through the periodic review of all the rules, as the Rules Committee has done. That is a little bit unusual for an agency to periodically review their rules comprehensively every 5 years. And that is a testament to the diligence of this commission, that they review their rules periodically in a way that gives consideration to what changes need to be taken place and input from outside stakeholders as to what needs to change in that regard. So that is something for all of y'all to appreciate. You're muted.
Any questions of Stephen about the new space or the sunset process? Hope you all get to go by and see the new space. All right, hearing none, we can move on to item 13, which usually is a perfunctory issue every meeting, and it's about our future meetings. But this one, actually, we're going to have a quick discussion on. As you can see in your packet, on one of the last pages, our future meetings are listed. And the next one is April 6th, 2023. And both that meeting and the June 15th meeting have TBDs beside them. As I mentioned at the beginning, the current word is that we will not have access to the Texas Capitol during session. Of course, that could always change. As I mentioned also at the beginning, we're very appreciative of TCEQ for allowing us to meet at their facility today. But the idea that has popped up in our head is that because we don't have our traditional meeting facilities that we go to, it may be, and I know this may be short notice, but maybe the next meeting would be a good time to take our show on the road. So we are checking both possibly about a meeting in Granbury that could coincide with a tour of Comanche Peak potentially. And if any of you have any ideas about other places we should take our meetings, we obviously have discussed in the past also going to the South Texas project. And there's some timing issues there with their outages. So we obviously want to be respectful of that. So, but that will probably be something we do in the future. But if there's anywhere else in the past, we have gone to Waco, and Linda hosted a meeting. We have come up to the DFW area once. And I think there's been other places we have gone. So that being said, normally I rattle off where we're going to meet in the next couple of meetings. And today I can't really do that. The default will be Austin, obviously, if we don't decide on going somewhere else. But if any of you have any thoughts or ideas or comments on that, I will open the floor to any of that. Commissioner Mundy.
Can we put the June 15 meeting back a week? I have a continuing legal education that week. We conflict.
Yes, absolutely. We will look into it. We'll float that by everybody and make sure that we don't have a quorum concern moving it back a week. But we will run that to ground.
Yes, I also have a June 15th conflict. So a week earlier would be great, but-
Okay.
Commissioner Naik has a comment too.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a conflict on the April 6th one. I will be out of town by any chance. If you guys can, I'll be out of town till April 15th, unless if you can move it to.
We might look into that. And here's why, Commissioner Naik, because this meeting was a week late, it may make sense to move that back. But we will go through it and see if there's any urgency with any of the pending applications, and if there's any other concerns about having a quorum in moving it. But we will definitely look into that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other thoughts? I'm sorry, Commissioner Sadick.
I wouldn't be able to make the April 6th meeting.
Okay.
Do you folks guarantee there won't be a snowstorm at any of these times?
If we say there won't be, that means there will be. So,
Could be a hurricane by then.
right. Or locusts or who knows what. Any other comments about potentially going to other locales for meetings? I think our common thought is we should go somewhere where we can get to see a site or a facility or something like that. But any other ideas about other potential locales? And obviously, before I forget, our August meeting is going to be set in Andrews again, and then our October meeting will be in Vermont. So we have those two already on the schedule, but this next meeting in particular, while the legislature is still in session, is there any thoughts about going somewhere else?
Brandon, I would like to see us, if we can work it out with South Texas Project, to have a meeting down there. That, I believe, to the best of my knowledge, we've never met in the area of the South Texas Project. So I think that would be a good idea if we could do that.
City.
Yeah, Bay City or something like that. I believe they have a facility where we could host a meeting at South Texas as
That has to
well.
be open.
And Stephen, what was the issue with their outages? What was the time frame?
I don't recall. ARDT is right here. I believe we talked with one of the guys when he was at the meeting. We suggested that, and he told that was at the November meeting. I think that was where. Yeah, and I think it was Mr. Rodriguez was there, and he said there was a problem with us having an April challenge with meeting at South Texas Project because of their outage. But I don't remember when we had that discussion. They may have moved that since then, but we can check.
We'll verify now. We'll verify.
The ARDT guys are here, and they told me they would check into that for when we could get to either Comanche Peak or South Texas Project.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns about future meetings? Hearing none, I think we can move on to our last item on the agenda, which is a motion to adjourn. Is
So
anyone?
moved.
Is there a second?
That was quick.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you all so much for attending today.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I had to get inside the gate there. The guy was